I'm all for really easy to play rackets nowadays, and this isn't one of them. Yes, you read that right. What is going on with Victor's Thruster F Ultra? So much has changed compared to the previous generation, which in my opinion was one of Victor's most popular badminton rackets, especially when it was famous for being extremely user-friendly and forgiving. However, it's different with this generation, and if you're thinking of upgrading from the previous generation to this current one, watch this till the end. Before I start, for those of you who don't know, I've launched a podcast with another Victor, and it's none other than two-time Olympic champ Victor Axelsen. It's called the Average Not Average Podcast. I'll link it here and also in the description. Go check it out. We drop a fresh episode every 2 weeks on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Victor is super responsive in the comments, so subscribe and let us know what you think. Right, let's talk about the Thruster F Ultra. In terms of looks, the frame shape hasn't changed that much, as well as the frame thickness and depth. However, you can see that there are some lightning stripes decals along the frame for detail, and it is still black in color, as well as some of the copper tints which are still present from the previous generation. Talking about the frame design, the thickness of the frame does vary, being thickest at the T-joint as well as the top of the racket, especially above the 2 and 10 o'clock regions. The thinnest parts of the rackets are around the 5 and 7 o'clock regions at only 10 millimeters thick. The frame height is 24 centimeters, whereas the frame width is 18.2 centimeters, almost identical to the previous generations. The recess area at the frame again is at the 2/3 of the top half of the racket, identical to the previous generation again. If we look further down, this is where the most significant change is, the shaft. The previous generation's Thruster F had a pre-standard shaft diameter of 6.7 millimeters as well as a 21 centimeters in length. However, this generation has gone down significantly in terms of shaft thickness, advertised at 5.8 millimeters, but I measured it at 6.0 flat. The length of the shaft remains at 21 centimeters, which is attached to a free-core handle measuring in at 17 centimeters. The previous model mentioned that the racket was made in Taiwan, whereas this isn't stated for this generation. 6mm in shaft diameter is actually the thinnest ever shaft that is measured on this channel, and it is actually currently shared by 2 rackets, the other being Victor Aurospeed 100X Ultra racket, which will be reviewed very shortly, so make sure you subscribe to find out when it drops. Traditionally, a thin shaft often means a flimsy response as the racket is more rippy, especially from the torsional perspective. However, Victor has stressed that this version of the super thin shaft isn't flimsy and actually is slightly stiffer if you look at the racket stiffness chart that is printed on the racket shaft. Thinner racket shafts also traditionally mean the racket will have a slightly smoother swing feel, and air swings of this generation compared to the previous one actually do sound different, so I do look forward to the hitting test later. One more thing to note, I really like the racket butt cap that is on the free core handle at the bottom of the racket. It looks modern, minimalist, and pretty cool. I like that. The racket I'm testing with is a 4U model racket rated to 31 pounds in tension, and in terms of stringing, obviously I strung it with my usual string setup of Aerobite at 27 by 29 pounds in tension. There were no issues with stringing with the racket at all. As this racket came bare without any racket grips on, I then put on 2 layers of overgrips or graps with my usual AC108 graps on to mimic the usual stock grip, plus 1 grap on the racket, which I'm used to playing. Here are the swing measurements for the Thruster F Ultra against its previous generation. Remember to protect your precious badminton rackets with the premium racket protection tape, available worldwide with free delivery at ckYW.com/shop. We also have the super limited edition prints too, check them out. Right, time to put this guy through its paces. Obviously, I started with the previous generation with the Thruster F Enhance, and it felt true to my previous review, with it being very easy to play with, slightly head heavy, and lots of easy power. And as soon as you swap over to the F Ultra, you will feel that it has a different response, and nowhere near as forgiving as the previous generation. Obviously, I mentioned earlier that dry swings feel faster, or at least with thinner shafts. You will generally feel faster swings, but I did not feel that at all. I felt it was quite hard to get a clean hitting timing with this new generation Thruster F Ultra. It was not a good start. It's also a reason why this review has taken quite a while to be published. For those eagle-eyed, you will have noticed that I posted a photo of me playing with it on my Instagram, and the photo was actually posted in early March. In actual fact, these photos were taken in mid-January, hence I've been testing with this racket for quite a while. I was not happy with how it felt, as I couldn't believe how hard it is to play with the new generation F Ultra, especially when the previous version was so good. And sometimes during testing you can have bad days, you can have off days, and just like any other playing day. So I left it a little while, then came back to it multiple times across different periods, and each time I felt the same way. All the notes that I've made reflects the same direction. The new generation F Ultra responds very differently to the previous one. The previous generation's response was much more predictable. This new generation racket isn't as forgiving. I found myself having a hard time timing overhead shots, as it just did not feel that easy to play with. Granted, Victor has had to make the shaft stiffer somehow with this thinner design, but through this process I felt that the response from the F Ultra wasn't consistent. It is much harder to time with this model, and the feeling of the shell coming off the racket was also not as nice as the previous generation. If you're off timing, there's also a dull vibration that's coming through the handle. For me, the Thruster F's frame, Ultra or not, are slightly longer than usual at 24 centimeters compared to a standard racket. Hence, you expect an easier time with the sweet spot and timing, but this isn't the case here. I also want to add that I didn't really feel that this version was faster than the previous generation. As I mentioned earlier, thinner shafts normally mean faster swings, but I didn't feel that at all with this generation. Additionally, I actually felt that this one was slightly slower or head heavier compared to the previous generation. Previously, I mentioned the Thruster F Enhanced as a racket that I do not consider as a true head heavy racket, as it's only slightly heavier than an even balanced design. However, with this generation, it feels like a true head heavy racket, and that suffers in defense. It feels draggy during those short, sharp shots, which I did not enjoy very much. But if you catch one cleanly, you will have no issues finding lots of power with your shots. Ultimately, it sounds like I'm pretty harsh with this racket, but if you're coming from the previous generation, you will be disappointed with this one, as you will find this one not as easy to play with. However, suppose you're completely brand new to Victor and have not played with a Thruster F before. In that case, you will find this racket a normal, high-end, decent head-heavy racket with all the usual pros and cons of a head-heavy racket design. Nothing exceptionally unique. I'm all for really easy to play rackets nowadays, and this isn't exactly one of them. I'm not sure if Victor trying to squeeze in the headline ultra-thin shaft compromised how the feel of the racket was developed, or simply it affected the racket's playability. I can tell you right now that the next racket I'll be reviewing is the Aura Speed 100X Ultra, which also has the same advertised 5.8mm shaft. That one went so much better than this one. With that, I'll see you in the next one.